Good morning, everyone. I'm Bianca from Acceler8, and today I will be talking about moving forward with flexible workspaces. So, more specifically, I'm here to talk about the office space market and the challenges our industry has been facing because of COVID, and some practical tips to help businesses move forward. So, seeing that we have a long session together, here's a short list of what you can expect out of our time together. So, first, I will be sharing about some office solutions for any type of business and every type of business, some common challenges our businesses are facing during this time, some tips to help you maximize your office if you have one, a remote work checklist to put in place, and some tools we suggest that you should have, fun ways to keep your team engaged while continuing to work from home, and the burning question for everyone would be if offices will be irrelevant now that work from home is proven feasible. So let's start with a bit of a history lesson about workspaces. So when you think of an office, this is how you would usually picture it. So all we knew before were these types of offices wherein you had your own cubicle or workstation, and it's a very formal place to be in. There were actually already some forms of flexible workspaces as early as 1960s and 1970s, if you can believe it. These were law firm offices had that decided to share their support services like call answering or let's say share half of the floor with another tenant. So yeah. But because of tech and innovation, anyone with the internet now can find work opportunities online or start a business. There's a tremendous amount of freelancers now, developers, creatives, and founders, those that we call digital nomads. We also have a new set of workers or workforce now, which is called the gig economy. And before we even realized it, the workforce has changed forever. These new breed of professionals started working from home, started working from coffee shops, anywhere that they can get Wi-Fi, internet, and socket to plug their devices. But then in the long run, it wasn't proven sustainable because, like, if you go to the bathroom in a cafe, you might be scared of leaving your laptop there, right? So realtors and entrepreneurs, building landlords saw the opportunity to accommodate these small, legitimate businesses. They understood that these small businesses aren't able to commit to long-term leases yet or put down heavy deposits. They needed a place to work with internet, coffee, and a desk with a socket. And so co-working spaces were born. By textbook definition, co-working spaces fall under the flexible workspace umbrella. And under flexible workspaces, you also have serviced offices and incubators. So a co-working space is actually an open plan setup where people take any seat available. Serviced offices naman are private office suites where similar to where I'm in with a fixed number of workstations, and it's dedicated to one company for a period of 3 months or more. Incubators are part of the flexible workspaces because although the main business model of incubators is to mentor and support startups, some incubators have office space as part of their package or they subsidize the office space for the startups that they incubate. So for Acceler8, we are a mix of the co-working space, which is the open area, and private offices. We also have shared spaces like the meeting rooms and event space. So why do co-working spaces exist? Why do co-working spaces exist? The way we consume things are different now, and we also value a different, sorry. So why do co-working spaces exist? The way we consume things are different now, and we value different things compared to other generations. And we want to see those same things in our workspaces. So we want flexibility, we want autonomy, we want work-life balance. All of these are reflected in co-working spaces. So first is flexibility. We want flexibility to be able to move into our office anytime, work whenever we need to, and have everything set up for us already. So with flexible workspaces, as the word suggests, we're very flexible in terms of lease terms and the offerings we have. And I will be sharing with you those solutions shortly after. Next is variety. So some companies don't actually need all of the services of an office right away. And because of the variety of solutions that flexible offices have, you can scale up, upgrade, or downgrade as you see fit. And you don't have to, again, commit to long-term leases. Next would be community. So even if you're a freelancer or if you're just one person starting out or building a team, or if you have a small team, there's a sense of community in co-working spaces, in Acceler8, that, that makes you feel like you belong with others because you work alongside other companies, other individuals, and there's a sense of belonging because you work in the same workspace. So yeah, and of course, lastly is cost efficiency. Sorry. Sorry, I'll start this page over. Okay. On a more practical note, of course, flexible workspaces offer efficiency. In terms of cost savings, there are no heavy security deposits, and you only pay for what you use and use for what you pay. There's also assistance from community managers and, of course, the shared resources I mentioned. So you really don't have to invest in printers anymore, in your own aircon or other stuff. So you just move in anytime and just pay for what you use. So throughout the whole presentation, I will be referring to co-working spaces, serviced offices as flex or co-working. So I will be interchanging the terms. So flexible workspaces have the facilities and services that let you function like any other company without capital costs. So these are the usual services or plans that co-working spaces or flex spaces have. So for the first one, I'll give you a cheat sheet for each one and the persona of who our customers are, or just so you know which type of service fits your needs best. So co-working plans and dedicated desks are perfect for people who are working remotely, but whose homes aren't conducive for productivity. There are a lot of us who have that problem. Next would be teams that need to occasionally work together, but are work from home most of the time. So for co-working plans and dedicated desks, you can book a seat for a day, a week, or get a monthly membership as you see fit. Next would be conference rooms available. So you can book a conference room for as an hour, just let's say when you need to meet a client, or for people who, again, need to meet physically, people who need to take confidential calls with no private space at home, or people who need to shoot a webinar as well, like me. Next would be virtual office plans. So this is a package that's actually not as familiar as our other plans because of the whole concept of it. So virtual office plans allow you to use the business address to register your business. So you get legitimacy from SEC up to BIR, and you get an office representation as you continue to work from home. So this plan is good for companies that have adapted to work from home setup and if they need a virtual receptionist. So for virtual office plans, the terms usually are as short as 3 months, and you can just upgrade the support services as needed. And lastly would be serviced office suites. So these are move-in ready offices that you can scale up or down with. And this type of office solution is perfect for companies with large teams, companies looking at decentralizing their office HQ, and also companies setting up satellite offices near their team's residences. So the future of flexible workspaces looked promising. Actually, it still does, but I'll explain later. Since the year I started working, which is 2015, there was a 20% year-on-year growth globally. And according to Collier's 2019 report, we can expect Manila's flexible workspace area expanding by at least 10% per annum over the next 3 years. Another trend we've been seeing are real estate developers and office buildings getting into flex. So they're offering it as a building amenity. So Finma Properties got into a joint venture, actually partnership with Acceler8, to open our Rockwell branch. Another real estate developer that has entered the flex market is Ayala Land Offices. So they have a flexible workspace brand called Clock In, and their first site in Makati Stock Exchange, we actually help manage their operations during their first year. So besides real estate developers, buildings are also beginning to see the value in flexible workspaces. Besides making sure that the tenant mix is diverse, they see flex as an added amenity that responds to the occupier's lifestyle, and it enhances the overall tenant experience. So it's similar to having like a food court in your building where you don't have to cross the street to go to the mall or have food delivered. It's conveniently in the same building. So much like flex, let's say your office floor is full and you need meeting space. You can conveniently go down to a co-working space to book a meeting room for the time being. So yeah, the future of flexible workspaces looked promising, but then COVID-19 happened. It's changed the way we live, the way we work, and the way we interact with each other. And across different industries, I see 4 common challenges we faced when the lockdown hit. I will be sharing with you why these were common challenges, and I'll be using flexible workspace industry as an example. Along the way, I will also be sharing tips to help you overcome these challenges as well. So first is the challenge, which is our business model or your business model. So for businesses who have a physical store, or if you are service-based, or if your business heavily relies on face-to-face interactions with customers, I'm sure you felt the pain of the lockdown and you were heavily affected by the pandemic, the effects of the pandemic. A quick survey A quick survey conducted last May by FlySpaces among operators across Asia showed that the Philippines has the most number of flexible workspaces closed during the start of the quarantine. This is in part because we had stricter restrictions compared to our neighbors in Southeast Asia. And from the same report as well, 54% of operators reported not having received any form of rent relief from their landlords. Like many others, we also didn't get our rent waived from the building for some of our spaces. But in solidarity, we decided to pass on the cost savings we had, the little cost savings we had to our tenants in the spirit of solidarity. So yeah, our business model is basically to rent out the spaces so we can pay for our rent. But because of the lockdown, of course, people weren't able to use their space, and it didn't make sense for them to pay rent when they weren't able to utilize it. So yeah, next is the challenge that is remote work. If you had a time in and time out system, if your files, processes, and systems were on a local drive instead of being backed up on the cloud, I'm sure you had a challenge of mobilizing your business operations. And of course, after X number of months in quarantine, we're still in quarantine, we were forced to make work from home work. And now that remote work has been proven feasible, many employers are actually thinking about adapting remote work policies. So people thought that they wanted work from home setup, or people thought that they don't need offices anymore. But the challenge is, in the Philippines, we normally have 2 to 3 generations of the family typically housed under one roof. So working would be difficult if you're surrounded by family who are just a few meters away, or if you have dogs at home that suddenly bark when you're in the middle of a call. And of course, infrastructure-wise, internet at home is not as stable and there's no IT support to help out with that. According to co-working insights from respondents who frequently used co-working spaces across the globe, remote work was rated 77 out of 100, and 87% of the respondents say that they would recommend remote work arrangements to a friend. But out of all those respondents, when they were asked if they would return to co-working when it's possible, 71% of them said that they would. And I actually am part of that 71%. It just means that a lot of people don't have space in their homes, or it's really difficult to work from home because it's a place where you rest and it's hard to carve out space for work. And even if you do, cabin fever may hit you, right? So for every one of us who are managing teams remotely, I want you guys to, I want to share these tips with you guys to make sure that your team is, well supported and you can continue to operate pa rin. So first is to make sure you align your company culture and values with everyone as you continue to work remotely. So this is as simple as setting expectations on response time. What work hours will work for you guys? I mean, it's a flexible workspace arrangement, but it's good to set it out there because the expectations that we have with employees in the office and with work from home are different. Second, of course, is to make sure that everyone in the team has the right tools, especially Wi-Fi at home. Some of us are renting spaces, or some of us don't have reliable Wi-Fi at all. So it's good that you make sure that everyone has the right tools, not just Wi-Fi, but work laptop and others. Third would be to separate your productivity platform from your engagement platform. So what does this mean? The productivity platform is used for messaging for work-related deliverables, while engagement platform is a place where you kind of chat with your colleagues as a replacement for those coffee breaks or lunchtime breaks where you just hang out with your colleagues. And of course, the fourth is to have a mass communications platform in place. So when you have company-wide announcements, make sure that you utilize a platform that everyone will be notified of easily. And lastly, if possible, try to set a budget for engagement activities. Or if you don't have the budget for that, or if you don't have the budget for that, you can just get creative by making recognition certificates or using free tools online to engage with your team. Some categories that you can start off with to engage with your team remotely would be health and wellness. So health and wellness includes mind, body, and soul. So mind means taking care of your mental health, just trying to check in with one another or recommend apps to each other. I personally use Headspace and try to carve out time in my day to have 10 minutes of quiet time just to meditate. Next would be body. So this includes workouts. Among your team, maybe you can share workout programs or workout videos that anyone can follow. And lastly would be for your soul. So what things can you do for the health and wellness of your soul. This would be maybe thanking frontliners, or sending out thank you notes, or just reaching out to your colleagues. And, even if it's just remotely, just reaching out to them and knowing that, letting them know that you appreciate them and that you're there for them. Next would be entertainment. So for entertainment, one fun thing that we did in Acceler8 was host a Netflix party. So before, we used to host movies on site, like movie showings on site. But because we're working remotely, we did with Netflix parties. So it's a Google Chrome plugin that you can use that lets you watch the movie together at the same time. And there's a chat box on the side to help you engage with one another. Next would be games. So early on in the lockdown, there was a trend, the bingo trend that all companies were doing. So it's like a bingo card where you cross out if you fit that criteria. So that's something that you can do for your team as well. Next would be skills. Of course, we find ourselves wanting to do different things, or finding things to do at home without having to leave, or not too costly. So maybe a few things you can do would be to share home cooked meals, recipes, or maybe find time to showcase talents or projects that you've been doing during the quarantine. Lastly would be trainings and continuous learning. Free platforms for training include maybe TED Talks. Harvard has an online course where they give certifications out. And of course, attend Philippine Startup Week, like what you're doing now. So these tips for engaging with your teams remotely was actually part of our Happy Hour special, one of our first webinars online with Culture Co. And you can learn more about it on our website. Next would be the sorry, pause ulit. Okay, so next would be the challenge of demand. So during the lockdown, your customers may have found alternative options for your products or services. Your customers may also have decided to downgrade their plans or completely cut costs with you. So that also happened to us. And with this, you had to, of course, we all had to think of a pivot strategy. The defensive mode for most companies would be to cut unnecessary costs right away. And some companies have done this early on in the lockdown. And I'm sure most businesses have done it. Again. Okay. The defensive mode is to cut down unnecessary costs. And most companies have done this earlier on in the lockdown. These unnecessary costs are usually external suppliers, underutilized plans and subscriptions, agency outsourced work, and of course also office space if possible. Okay, so this is a blueprint, bounce back blueprint by Husky Digital, which perfectly simplifies the three categories that businesses fall in during the pandemic. So not all businesses were severely affected by the lockdown and the pandemic, right? There were some that continued to thrive or even grew exponentially during the time because they solved problems for the pandemic. So first includes those businesses that were not affected at all. So they're under the grow column. Next would be businesses that were momentarily affected. They're under the adapt column. And lastly, businesses that were outrightly affected survive. So the box you see here is refers to Husky Digital, which is a marketing agency. But for Acceler8, we fall in between adapt and survive. So we're a business that was momentarily affected. And also we are currently trying to survive as well. So just to give examples for the three categories, For those that weren't affected at all include e-commerce platforms, e-medicine, e-learning, on-demand gaming and fitness, logistics, and IT services. Next would be those companies that were momentarily affected include technology and software. So those plans and subscriptions you have that you decided to downgrade or do without at all, consulting and professional services, and anyone with outside channel sales. And lastly, businesses that were outrightly affected. Of course, we all are familiar with how the travel industry was severely affected by COVID-19. Events business, we are now all shifting online. Brick and mortar retail and restaurants. So again, as mentioned, Acceler8 falls between adapt and survive. So what does this mean for us? While demand is lower than before, we can't cancel out outright. Um, sorry, pause. Okay, so what does this mean for us? First, try to assess which category you fall under. And second, adjust or pivot as you see fit. So what does this mean for Acceler8 as a flexible workspace? While demand was lower than before, we cannot cancel outright all the affected industries together because, as mentioned, some are businesses as usual during this time, or some of them are actually rapidly growing. So there's an opportunity for us to fulfill that demand by pivoting. So for Acceler8, we have started to rethink how to use our office spaces. And let me share with you a quick video of what we put out. So we've started to rethink how we use our office spaces. We have internet, we have the workspace, private and open. So what can we do with it? First is to offer it to event companies that have shifted to webinars, because some of them can't run their webinars from home with their internet at home, right? Second would be to offer it for online classes. Of course, our rates are a bit higher than what students would need. So we were targeting grad school students or medical professionals. Next would be to offer it as a showroom because our branches are located across malls. So we can also offer as an alternative for retail spaces. And it doubles also as their back office retail. Some other companies or some other examples across different industries that have pivoted with regards to the changes in demand would be in travel industry, AirAsia actually launched recently like an unlimited local flights package just to get their demand back and encourage people to travel again, at least locally. And next would be serviced apartments and hotels that have transitioned from offering overnight stays to offering their private rooms as office spaces as well. So for your business, you should start thinking of ways on how you can repurpose or rethink your business with the current assets that you have. So again, for us, it was internet and the physical space. So we did what we had and pivoted from there. Last challenge that I have been seeing, and of course everyone is thinking about, would be the challenge of surviving. So most healthy businesses will have about 2 to 3 months of runway to keep their business afloat. And as we are already 8 months in the lockdown, let's take a moment to say great job to all the businesses out there who are still able to pull through. Whether you are barely getting by or if the business is already picking up again, the effects of this pandemic will continue to affect us in the long run. And that's what we have to recognize as well. So we're not just working on our campaigns in the short term, but we also have to realize and think about how this will affect our business industry, our business in the long run. So let me share with you some survival mode tips that you can immediately work on right away. Hopefully you have already done this, but I'll share them anyway. So first is if you haven't already yet, take the time to assess your business operations and invest in cloud-based software. So I hope that you won't wait for another crisis to happen to make you realize that you should have taken your operations online sooner. Some of Acceler8's cloud-based tools, some of them are free, include the whole the whole Google Suite, including Google Drive. So all our documents are centralized in Google Drive, where we can access it anytime, anywhere. Next is Asana to track deliverables, your own deliverables and your team deliverables. We also use HubSpot for our sales and marketing platform. We use Sprout for HR, and we also use Paymaya to send and receive payments. Okay, next survival tip is to craft more output-based performance indicators. So we have to start looking beyond monitoring attendance and instead start evaluating how much the employee brings in on a daily basis. So you can use the framework OKRs, that stands for Objectives and Key Results, as a way to start. So the point of putting together output-based performance indicators is to easily track the measurable goals that you set for your colleagues or your team. And having this will make it easier for managers to adapt to remote work because they know what they're looking for when they look at the output of employees or look at the performance of employees. Similarly, this will also protect the income of employees because they will be measured by their output and not by the hours that they render. So after survival mode thinking, also spend time to look at the long term and what you can do in the long term. So first, of course, is to be prudent in spending as much as possible. So you can continue working lean with a virtual office package. So this allows you to have a representation of an office and the functions of an office at a fraction of a cost. And the second point is to shift from a CapEx mindset to an OpEx mindset when it comes to office space. So this goes with the first point, which is to be as lean as possible. This pandemic has left behind a lesson that it's important to maintain a healthy cash flow. Next to payroll, office space is usually the biggest fixed cost and longest commitment that companies take on. As a result, companies may start to avoid long-term or cash-heavy commitments moving forward. And that's a smart thing to do, actually, because the market is still volatile and you have to maintain a healthy cash flow. Lastly, would be to permanently adapt remote work policies and provide support. Provide support is important by signing your team up for a co-working plan. So while remote work will be acceptable, employees would still want to have an office to work out of. You can easily scale up or down with a flexible operator. So it's also important to note that some industries will not be able to continue to adapt work from home because of security and data concerns. And also because of the usual Filipino household structure of having 2 to 3 generations, as mentioned earlier. And also on the flip side, for those who are living alone, if we continue to work remotely, they will have to deal with loneliness and isolation from continuing to remote work. And so the burning question, will office spaces now be irrelevant? It's actually a yes and no. So companies have decided to adapt work from home policies until the end of the year, or actually until a vaccine is made available. Dropbox company has recently decided to go fully remote and use their current office as a flexible workspace, and they decided to call it Dropbox Studios. Another example would be Facebook, wherein they used to have their whole team work from the office HQ, but now have decided to make parts of their team fully remote. So it will be really painful for a business like ours in the short term, but definitely there will be a lot of losses, and definitely there will be a lot of losses for the whole economy. But like any other financial crisis, we choose to see the optimistic side of this instead. So what's happening in the flexible workspace industry right now is similar to how we used to think that we needed cars to get around until Uber and Grab happened. So what's happening in Flex right now is actually similar to how we used to think that we needed cars to get around until Grab or Uber happened. But for us, it actually took a pandemic for customers to shift to Flex. But the end goal is, of course, to find a conducive place to work, and that's where we come in. We will start to see the flexible workspace customer demographics shift from SMEs to more corporations and enterprise. Learning from experience from one of the earliest cases of COVID in the Philippines, where a Deloitte employee tested positive, and as a result, the company's offices and the entire building had to be shut down for a few days to disinfect the facilities. So in this case, almost immediately, hundreds of workers have been misplaced and left to find alternative workspaces. And on a more practical note, these big companies will start to decentralize their office HQs by assigning flex offices across the city or near suburbs to bring the office closer to their employees as a form of support. We spend one third of our lives or more at work, and of course, we want to make sure that what we are working on fills our lives with purpose in a place where we are inspired and surrounded by people who are working towards their goals as well. And as the office put it, an office is a place where dreams come true. Thank you so much, and we look forward to moving forward with you.